The studio lights were bright. So bright that they almost felt warm on the skin. Rows of white lights hung above the stage, shining down on the soft blue set of the Kelly Clarkson Show. The cameras were moving slowly, sliding from one angle to another. Crew members stood quietly behind them, watching every moment. The audience filled every seat. Some people held their phones. Some whispered to each other with excitement. Many of them were big fans. They were waiting for music, laughter, and a fun conversation. Because today's guest was someone they loved. Teddy Swims. When his name had been announced a few minutes earlier, the room exploded with cheers. Teddy had walked onto the stage with his usual calm energy. He waved politely and smiled for the crowd. His tattoos showed beneath the sleeves of his shirt. His beard was neatly trimmed. He looked strong and confident. But if someone looked closely into his eyes, they would notice something else. Something heavy. Something that didn't belong in a happy talk show interview. Across from him sat Kelly Clarkson. She smiled warmly, just like she always did with her guests. The audience adored her energy. Her voice had once filled huge concert arenas, and now it filled living rooms across the country every afternoon. Today she wore a soft blue dress that matched the color of the set. Her hair fell gently over her shoulders. In her hands were a few cue cards. From the outside, everything looked normal. A famous singer interviewing another famous singer. But something invisible sat between them. 7 years of silence. 7 years of unanswered questions. 7 years since the last time they had seen each other face to face. Kelly shifted slightly in her chair and glanced at the camera that was now pointing toward her. "All right everyone," she said with her familiar friendly voice, "today we have someone very special with us." The audience clapped loudly. Kelly turned toward Teddy with a bright smile. "You know him from his incredible voice and powerful songs. Please welcome Teddy Swims." The audience cheered again even though he was already sitting there. Some people stood up to clap harder. Teddy gave a small nod and raised his hand in appreciation. "Thank you," he said quietly. His voice was deep and calm. Kelly leaned back slightly in her chair, crossing her legs as she looked at him. "So, Teddy," she began. Her voice sounded relaxed, but her fingers tightened around the cue cards just a little. "It's been a long time." Teddy didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked around the studio slowly. First at the audience, then at the cameras, then at the band sitting nearby with their instruments resting quietly. The room slowly became quieter. Because Teddy wasn't smiling the way guests usually smiled. Finally, his eyes moved back to Kelly. "Yeah," he said softly. 7 years. The words hung in the air for a moment. Kelly gave a small laugh, trying to keep the atmosphere light. "Well, yeah," she said. 7 years goes by fast." But Teddy didn't laugh. His eyes stayed steady. "Does it?" he asked. Kelly paused for half a second. Something about his tone felt different. The audience didn't notice yet. They were still relaxed, still expecting the interview to move toward music, new songs, and funny stories. Kelly glanced quickly at her cue cards. "So," she said smoothly, shifting the conversation, "you've got a brand new album coming out next month, and people are already talking about it everywhere." The big screen behind them showed a photo of Teddy's album cover. The audience clapped again. Teddy nodded once. "Yeah," he said. Kelly leaned forward slightly, smiling again. "I listened to the single last night," she continued. "It's powerful, really emotional. What inspired that song?" For a moment, Teddy didn't answer. Instead, he looked down at his hands. His fingers slowly rubbed together like he was thinking about something far away. Then he looked up again. "At first," he said quietly, "I thought it was just a song." Kelly waited politely. "But after a while," Teddy continued, "I realized it wasn't really about music." The audience listened more carefully now. "It was about a memory," he said. Kelly's smile faded just a little. "What kind of memory?" she asked. Teddy leaned back against the couch. His eyes moved around the studio again. Then he looked straight at her. "The kind you can't forget," he said. Kelly felt something tighten inside her chest. But she kept her professional smile. "Well," she said lightly, "those are usually the best songs." The audience chuckled softly, but Teddy didn't react. Instead, he spoke again. "You know something strange about memories," he said. Kelly blinked. "What?" They stay exactly the same, Teddy replied. Even when people disappear. The room suddenly felt different. Not loud, not fun, just quiet. Kelly felt the temperature inside the studio drop, even though the lights were still warm above them. She shifted slightly in her chair again. Teddy, she said carefully, we're really excited to hear about your music today. Teddy nodded slowly. I know, he said. Then he looked straight at her again. But music isn't the only reason I came here. The audience began whispering softly. Something unexpected was happening. Kelly tried to laugh again, but it sounded a little forced. Well, she said, what else brings you here? Teddy studied her face for a long moment. 7 years of memories passed silently between them. 7 years since Nashville. 7 years since a rainy night. 7 years since promises that were never explained. You really want to know? Teddy asked. Kelly swallowed quietly. The cameras zoomed in closer. Of course, she said. Teddy leaned forward slowly, resting his elbows on his knees. Then he spoke the words that changed the entire room. 7 years is a long time, he said calmly. A long time to pretend nothing happened. The audience fell completely silent. Kelly's heart began beating faster. Because the way he said it made it clear, this wasn't going to be a normal interview. And deep inside, Kelly already knew exactly which memory he was about to bring back. The memory she had spent 7 years trying to forget. The last night they ever saw each other. The night before she disappeared. The room felt colder. Nothing in the studio had changed. The lights were still shining brightly. The cameras were still quietly moving on their tracks. The band members were still sitting in their places with their instruments. But something in the air had shifted. The audience could feel it. Just a few minutes ago, everyone expected laughter, music, and a friendly interview. Now the room was silent. Teddy leaned forward slowly, resting his elbows on his knees. His hands were clasped together, and for a moment he stared down at the floor like he was searching for the right words. Kelly watched him carefully. She kept her professional smile, but it had grown weaker. Her fingers tightened around the cue cards again. Teddy, she said softly, trying to guide the conversation back to something safer, we can always. You remember Nashville? Teddy suddenly asked. His voice was calm, but it carried across the studio like a quiet echo. Kelly stopped speaking. For a second, she didn't move. Then she slowly nodded. Yes, she said. Just that one word. But the memory came rushing back for both of them. 7 years earlier. A small apartment in Nashville. Rain hitting the windows. The soft yellow light of a lamp in the corner of the room. Back then, Teddy wasn't famous yet. He was just a young singer with a guitar, playing in small bars and writing songs late at night. Kelly sat on the couch while he played for her. The room smelled like coffee and rain. Teddy had been nervous that night. He kept glancing at her as he played a song he had just written. A song about hope, about staying together even when life became difficult. When the song ended, Kelly's eyes were full of tears. That was beautiful, she whispered. Teddy smiled shyly. I wrote it for you, he said. She stood up and walked over to him slowly. You always write songs like you already know the future, she said. Teddy laughed softly. I just write what I feel. Kelly looked at him carefully then. The rain outside was getting heavier. Promise me something, she said quietly. What? No matter what happens, you won't give up on your dreams. Teddy looked surprised. Why would I give up? Kelly didn't answer that question directly. Instead, she reached for his hand. And promise me, she added, that you'll remember this moment. Teddy squeezed her hand. I'll remember every moment with you, he said. Kelly leaned her head against his shoulder. I'll always stay, she whispered. Back in the studio, Teddy lifted his eyes again. The audience was listening so closely that no one even moved. You told me you wouldn't leave, Teddy said. Kelly swallowed slowly. Yes, she replied. Her voice was quieter now. Teddy nodded once. But the next morning, he continued, you were gone. The words hung in the air. Kelly stared down at her cue cards. She didn't say anything. You didn't leave a note, Teddy said. No text. No phone call. He shook his head slowly. You just disappeared. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Kelly finally looked up again. Teddy, she began. But he continued speaking. I called you for weeks. His voice remained calm, but there was pain behind it. I sent messages. I even went back to that apartment hoping you'd come back. Kelly's eyes filled with emotion. But Teddy wasn't finished. You blocked my number, he said. You changed your email, and then I heard you moved to another city. Kelly took a slow breath. I had my reasons, she said quietly. Teddy laughed once. It wasn't a happy laugh. 7 years, Kelly. He shook his head again. 7 years and that's still the answer. Kelly's voice trembled slightly. You wouldn't understand. Teddy leaned back in his chair now, studying her face carefully. That's funny, he said. Because I think I understand more than you think. The audience looked between them, sensing something deeper beneath the conversation. Something unfinished. Kelly felt her heart beating faster. There was something in Teddy's voice that made her uneasy. Like he knew something. Something she had worked very hard to keep hidden. Teddy, she said carefully, this isn't really the place for the truth. He interrupted. Kelly didn't answer. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched across the studio like a long shadow. Then Teddy slowly reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. The movement was calm, but it made Kelly's stomach tighten instantly. What are you doing? She asked quietly. Teddy didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked down at his hand inside the pocket. I didn't come here to promote an album, he said slowly. The audience leaned forward slightly. The cameras zoomed in closer. Teddy pulled his hand out of the pocket. But he kept whatever he was holding hidden in his palm. Kelly stared at his hand. A strange feeling of fear moved through her chest. I came here, Teddy continued, because I finally found something. Kelly's voice became barely a whisper. Found what? Teddy lifted his eyes and looked directly at her. The answer, he said. The words made Kelly's face lose color. She knew. Deep down, she suddenly knew. 7 years ago she had walked away believing the truth would never reach him. That he would move on. That he would forget. But the way Teddy was looking at her now told her something had changed. And whatever he had discovered was about to come out in front of everyone.